Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan.
I recently read Lay's is reducing the palm oil in the chips they sell in India. Is that what sparked the topic for today for you?
It actually did. I also read it. I think you've got it right.
Okay.
And rather than just looking at it from a ingredient point of view, I was actually starting slightly broadly to say that why is this happening, and what is it that these brands, and there are a number of such instances. So what is it that these brands could have done better? And from that point of view, I came to saying that impact of culture on marketing.
It's not brands impacting culture. You're talking about culture impacting brands.
Correct. It is actually the other way around. And that's what I was saying, that a lot of our enthusiasts would have read case studies about how brands have impacted culture. They've created pop culture. They've created, there are a lot of references in pop culture about brands. We all hear how Pepsi shaped youth of US, or how Coke created this entire, thing about red in Christmas, red and white in Christmas, and all of that.
Yeah.
So
it's happened in India too.
Yeah,
right?
I think yes, and but I think the belief to be able to create it in India came from their parent market, where they were able to successfully do it. Yeah, and in fact, we have few more great examples in India. The one of the first and the dearest example is Cadbury. The whole thing around redefining meetha, and how Indian audience looks at meetha from Son Papdi to rich dry fruit collection is a big cultural shift.
Right.
We know that there have been companies that have created shift in culture because of the work that they have done. But today's discussion is about the other way around. Yeah. So how does culture impact marketing? So that was the starting thought in my head.
Okay.
And I was just reflecting on some of these actions which have recently happened. I follow a food farmer. In fact, I met him in one of the TEDx conferences as well. And we spoke a little bit about chocolate and my experience in Mondelez, etc. Since he has already shown great affinity towards Bonvita. So, and I've seen the sort of action that companies like Cadbury, Nestle, and now PepsiCo, Lay's, have taken, after he has started speaking about reading the ingredient list and the problem with sugar and palm oil, specifically, and the difference in the ingredient list of these companies' products in India and in European or American countries.
Right. So I have a layman's question. He's not really doing intensive research to figure out what is there in every product that's being sold. He is basically getting people to read the label.
Correct.
The label's been there always.
Correct.
Why do you think this is having such a big impact if he's just reading the back of pack ingredient list?
I think so. There are two parts to it. One is that, what he's asking people to do is to read the back of the pack so that you make informed decisions. As simple as that, as plain as that. But where I think the root of this lies is in one of the culture shifts that I want to talk about. I will talk about many more later. But one of the key things, and I read this also in one of the presentations that an MTV marketing manager made. MTV has this, they commission this youth research every year. And therefore, he presented themes of various things that they, observed in youth, etc., etc. And one of the key, I don't remember how they framed it, but I called it centralization of trust, which is all about, youth and the consumption audience today placing trust in only themselves and not in the government or large institutions or private companies, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a time where we used to say ki if government is doing it, it must be right. If Tatas are doing it, it must be right. If it is coming from such a large company, it must be right. Over a period of time, the sort of news and happenings that they have grown up on, there is significant amount of mistrust that this generation has on institutions.
Is that because of the information that's available to them
Also,
publicly?
yes, now that they don't need to rely only on the judgment of these institutions to decide what's best for them,
Right.
they have more than sufficient information and misinformation to take calls on their own.
In fact, that was my next question.
Yeah.
How are they able to tell the difference, or are they not telling the difference?
I think most of them are not telling the difference, but still, if anybody is interested, if you search hard enough, you will find sufficient articles on either side of an issue,
Exactly.
and so therefore you can then make a choice, make a call, right?
Right.
Because a lot of these uh, topics, scientific or non-scientific, operate at the edge of established scientific logic,
Right.
right? There is some amount of research, but it is not conclusive, and therefore it is left to the people to decide.
Right. I've seen reports that say tobacco is not harmful.
Correct.
So there are different kinds of reports that are
Milk,
available.
and yeah, there are lots of reports there, so at least there is sufficient amount of data and information available for everybody to take their own inferences and conclusions. But what that has done is that it has made people less trusting of large institutions, yeah, and thereby reposing trust in only themselves.
Understood.
Now what
Okay.
has happened therefore is, you were asking why is it creating waves, because people want to trust themselves,
Mhm.
and that is what Food Farmer is asking them to do.
Right.
Read the label, make the choice on your own, and hence I think it is resonating more than anything else.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Understood.
So therefore, when I was thinking through,
Mhm.
this was one of my abstractions, that why is it creating the impact that it is creating.
What other reasons are causing this cultural shift?
So my point is slightly broader, to say that there are a lot of cultural shifts that keep happening from time to time,
Okay.
and too often we as marketeers get caught up in whatever we have designed and something that has worked. We have brands of 500 crores, 1000 crores, 1500 crores, etc., already running, and therefore
Right.
we believe in this fallacy that whatever has happened till now, which has led to this success, will lead to success ahead.
Very true. Very, very true. Right.
Yeah, but some wise men have always said that what got you here
May not get you forward.
won't
Yeah.
get you
Okay.
there. So therefore, I think this is an invitation to all marketeers to constantly keep questioning their basic premise, basic offer, etc. itself. And the subject of today's episode is keep questioning, especially from a culture point of view. As the culture changes, assumptions change.
Okay.
And this got sparked in my head because of some conversation that I was having with somebody in R&D about Bonvita.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and the conversation was around, how much sugar is needed, what is needed, etc., etc. And something that he said stuck with me. His statement was that at certain point in time, Indians were calorie deficit, and sugar was supposed to be a rich source of calories, right? And therefore, at some point in time, this was considered a good dietary supplement, right? But now the times have changed, and so therefore now people look at it differently, and the calorie sources are sufficient.
Right. I I get that point. I get that change, Sudeep.
Hmm.
But you said marketers need to understand these broader shifts in culture and figure out what it means for their product, right? So how do you do that? How do you, because you do insights,
Hmm.
how do you understand this broader cultural shift?
I think we made this point earlier
Mhm.
about the fact that when you go meet consumers, 90% of the interaction should be about them. Yeah,
Got it.
only 5-10% should be about your category and your brand.
Mhm.
So marketers need to bear this in their heads all the time, so that they are able to understand what are the current pain point shifts, changes that are happening in consumers' life,
Hmm.
and therefore always have their radars or antennas up to capture if there is anything happening in the larger cultural context,
Okay.
right? I would also say that the primary responsibility of this would lie on the marketing leadership of an organization.
As in the ethics side of it?
Yeah, not just the ethics. I would say that too often your product managers, brand managers are focused on getting the product, the 4 P's of the marketing right. But the marketing leadership is the one that should, really focus on the larger cultural shifts, and therefore find ways to harness some of that information and constantly judge for its impact on products as well as marketing.
Got it.
So
Okay.
one part is responsibility with the senior marketing team. Second part is translating that responsibility into some sort of a action
Mhm.
which allows them to harness it via social media or via some of the young managers, etc.,
Mhm.
and spend some quality time thinking about its impact on the current scheme of things.
Can they hire these youngsters who belong to the new generation directly?
Oh, I think part of it is that every year you induct new people into the marketing team.
So just listen to them.
Listen to them. A lot of them come into your company also, because your company would possibly get them for their first jobs, etc., right?
Right.
So listening to them, and not just your marketing folk, but new guys who have joined in sales team, and obviously when you're meeting the consumers, etc., is such a rich source of uh, information, insights, as well as the reflections on the culture that those guys are growing up in.
Got
And
it.
many of those be drastically different from what you knew earlier,
Mhm.
and from the time that the could be different from the time when the brand was last refreshed. So that, therefore, there is responsibility on marketers to completely be alive on this side of the society.
Okay.
Now, just to elucidate what I was saying earlier, Sharan, I spoke about some of the cultural shifts. One of the cultural shifts that I spoke about is centralization of trust,
Right.
that I trust myself. Second thing was all around, I see that the latest generation is all about experimentation. They're happy to do all sorts of experimentation.
Okay.
But I see this with the advent of technology, with all kind of advancements happening all the time. Everybody realizes that there is significant risk everywhere.
Hmm.
Right? So at one point in time in previous generation, people used to be very wary of new things because they didn't know what it will do. I see that there is significant proclivity to experiment, but everybody is looking for some kind of security.
Hmm.
Right? So therefore, if there is a way of secure experimentation, that is something that I see picking up very, very well.
Where does the security need to come from? Is there a right to believe or reason to believe here?
Yeah, so I think various ways. One is, when suppose you're talking about a crypto platform,
Okay.
yeah, or an investment platform.
Hmm.
Now, the need to get compounded interests, the need to become rich or wealthy, has led to significant amount of younger generation get into investing very soon.
Right.
There are a lot of influencers, etc., who talk about its virtues, etc., etc., and hence, therefore, there is mushrooming of platforms of such kind. Right
Right.
now, the platforms which make them feel secure, give them the security that they'll not be swindled or their interests will be protected, etc.,
Mhm.
are the ones that will be able to take them on this journey, because they are experimenting with something.
Right.
They
Right.
have little money, but they are kind of putting it on the shelf
Mhm.
to get some returns later in life.
Okay.
Right? Part of it is about losing money. Second part of it is about losing trust and respect.
Hmm.
At that stage, youngsters are keen to prove themselves to their parents also. They don't want to make wrong decisions. Otherwise, they lose the trust and respect in their parents' eyes. So it all comes from there. So therefore, there is this thing around secure experimentation. Another one that we will notice is around good for me, good for everyone.
Okay.
Right?
What is it?
So at one point in time, we knew that we have so many people in India. So therefore, everybody wanted to secure their own interests,
Mhm.
right? So that and you knew that securing your interest will come at the cost of somebody else's.
A zero-sum game.
It was a zero sum game. We were a resource crunched country,
Right.
right? No more now.
Mhm.
So therefore, not only are people looking at uh, uh, positive sum games, but environment has also come into consideration now. So therefore, you will see a lot of thumbs up for good for me, good for environment, good for climate, sort of a good for earth, sort of categories, sort of campaign, kind of drives, etc. So that's another shift that I see, that somehow youngsters now have a broader horizon of impact. They believe that they can impact the impact the environment. At our point in time, in fact, I never used to believe that I can impact the organization that I'm working in. So which takes me to the next one, which is about anything is possible.
Okay.
Now, look at Shark Tank, look at various stories of people from modest backgrounds becoming big in life.
Hmm.
People believe that no amount of deprivation in terms of education, finances, exposure can prevent them from making it big in life.
Absolutely.
And I remember seeing this change in front of my eyes, and this was way back when I was working on gems.
Mhm.
uh, and I used to meet mothers. I used to ask them, what do you want your kids to be, etc., etc. And I started noticing from 2012-13 onwards that mothers in Mumbai at least used to start picking up and saying that my kid wants to be a DJ. I'm supporting her. I took my kid to trials in Dance Little India or whatever those series were,
Yeah.
Junior Dancer, Little Dancer, etc.,
Right.
because he dances very well and I want him to make the career in that field. So therefore there was consideration around some of those fields as well,
Right.
where I say, when we were growing up we only had three careers: engineer, doctor, or loser. So
I think that's
unfortunately,
changed drastically now.
drastically,
It's still
correct.
got some way to go, but it's drastically changed, and touch wood for that.
Correct. So therefore anything is possible is another thing that people believe in. So there will be 15 other things like this. I'm just talking about 3-4 things which are more than evident now.
Right.
And therefore I'm just putting this as an invitation to all marketing organizations to think about some of these cultural shifts, spend some time, ruminate on what could be the impact of these on your product or your service offerings, and then accordingly make changes. And not only react, but these will also give you an opportunity to lead the change. And therefore you might be the first one in the industry to do so, and thereby gain affinity, gain trust from the consumers. And it might therefore help impacting your brand positively, rather than just reacting once the consumer has moved up and you're trying to mitigate risks. That's the only invitation I want to lay it out in front of all the marketing organizations.
That's fantastic, Sudeep, because I have a very different point of view on what's happening. I think it needs a little bit of nuance, because Food Farmer Revata started, there are everybody else saying, "Did you know Cadbury Dairy Milk has got sugar?" I'm like, "Of course it's got sugar. Even meat has got sugar."
Hmm.
When people do this, they need to be a little more nuanced to say why something is wrong, and not just go around bashing up brands, because brands will take notice and people will also take notice
Correct.
just for views. And in doing this, if they could offer alternatives, and not every brand that's giving you sugar is an evil brand. So you got to
Yeah.
know the difference.
Correct.
And it's not just about sugar, even palm oil, right? Because of palm oil, there are also cost benefits to it. Yes, it's not healthy, but whoever told you chips are healthy? Even chips cooked in regular oil, still not very healthy. So people need a little bit of nuance. But the fact that this cultural change is happening and it's driving brands to take notice is something that's fantastic. And in today's times, where we say the younger generation has got no responsibility, these cultural shifts that you talk about today, I think are showing them in great light. And I think it's all sounds like a good change for the brand, the people, and pretty much the country too.
Correct. Hopefully the marketing fraternity takes notice and takes action accordingly.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net. That's CoBBcast.net.